Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Thirsty Thursday edition of The Rundown. I will be your host today, Craig DeLuz, coming at you from the West Coast, the left coast, behind the Iron Curtain, otherwise known as the Sierras, in a state known in free America as California. But as we all know, I do not do this program by myself.
No, he does not. I am his co-host, the co-host from the East Coast. That's the coast with the most from the co-host with the most. My name is Mike Piwowarski. I will be joining you today as the co-host from the East Coast. That's the co-host from the most from the East Coast with the most. Just want to make sure everybody got it. I said it twice this time because we got a comment that they don't know what I'm saying. So I spelled it out a couple different times there.
Well, now that we've worked through some of our technical challenges and whatnot, dude, your voice sounds so silky smooth, almost radio-esque.
And yours is absent of helium today, which is different.
Yeah, I know. New soundboard. Didn't do a sound check because we were rushing, and needless to say, I sounded like this, and I was saying, "Follow the yellow brick road."
Listen, folks, we sat down yesterday, and I listened. Listen, I have to pull the camera down and show you this, but yeah, totally new soundboards, totally new computer, everything going on. Both of us on both sides here, and I hooked in a bunch of new stuff yesterday, and when Craig came on, we did the preview. He had that weird high voice, and I thought, wow, those speakers are a little out of tune. I guess I'll just have to see about. I had no idea it was anything on his end. I thought it was computer on my end. Didn't say anything. So when people started to comment yesterday, what's wrong with Craig's voice? I was like, maybe it's not my speakers. maybe there is something on his end.
Well, folks, it is what it is, but we're working it out. We appreciate your patience as we work through the technical jibber jabber.
That's in the book, by the way. When you open up the technical manual, it says Chapter 1, jibber jabber.
Technical jibber jabber. That is in fact the way that it goes.
Yes. Y'all right. Don't stop.
Well, let's go ahead and let's jump right in, shall we? All right, now we all know you guys have been following this. I just realized I always start with we all know, but maybe we don't all know. We don't all know this one.
Bunch of dumbasses out there. On the liberal side.
Yes, on the liberal side, there are a bunch of dumbasses. We'll just call them what they are.
We could just say they're French and call them Mr. Dumas.
Dumases.
I mean,
Dumas.
Bonsoir Dumas.
Dumas. Okay, there you go. So we all know, this we do all know. We do all know that there are those who are intent on calling what happened on January 6th an insurrection. Now, mind you, it was a protest. It was a rally. It was a protest. There were people who did once they went to the Capitol, did engage in some violence, as well as individuals who entered the Capitol, supposedly some knowingly illegally and some illegally, and some did some stuff while they were in there. And, we're all in favor of those who committed crimes, that we make sure that, they're held accountable. So let's just get that out there. But there's an attempt now to actually go after anybody who said anything anywhere near or around or approximating January 6th, who might have said something that they can deem, or they are going to attempt to deem, to have been insightful, and then charge them with actually participating in the quote-unquote insurrection of January 6th. And one of the things they're trying to do is to keep individuals off the ballot who may or may not have been who they believe were participants. And one example is here in North Carolina. There's an election board that's trying to disqualify a sitting congressman from running for re-election. Now, this North Carolina election board is basically saying that what he participated in was basically an insurrection. They're trying to say that his words when he talked about when he talked about the fact that we need to fight to come against what they're trying to do, that we need to not ratify or certify the election. They're trying to say that in fact, those very words are in fact incited people to participate in the riot, and therefore he ought to not be able to run for re-election. Mike, I find this to be slightly, I'll just say this. Number one, it is endangering our democracy, our democratic republic, But secondly, I find it to be significantly hypocritical.
Oh, hypocritical is the least of it. Tyrannical is probably more accurate. They're going to decide who gets to be their opponents because remember, this is not just one opponent arguing with another opponent. This is the sitting the board there that's deciding, well, we're going to disqualify him because we don't like his politics, not because he did something illegal, which he did not. There's no crime been charged, no ethics violation, no morals violations, nothing along those lines. They don't like that he was there in D.C. with, depending on which service you look at, 10 or 15 of his closest 1,000, friends and buddies, exercising their First Amendment rights. They don't like that at all. I'm telling you, Craig, we are getting closer and closer to the day where it's going to be time to, fill up the cattle trucks and ride some people out and outside the village and have a conversation with them.
Well, now, Mike, here's what gets me. So they're specifically saying that it was when he said it's time to fight. And he called the people who refused to not certify the election, or the people who said that they were going to certify the election, the Republicans, he called them cowards. And those two statements, and what's funny is they don't even use the statements in the full context of what he said. They literally just pull out those two, like, little segment here and little snippet there, and that's what they're using as a means by which to quote unquote disqualify him. Now, you remember when during the impeachment trial for Donald Trump, they actually played a video of Democrats saying, yeah.
Which impeachment trial?
Oh, the second impeachment trial, the one relating to January 6th.
They're 0-2 against them.
Yeah, they are 0-2. But let me play a small snippet of what some of the Democrats had to say, once he got elected.
You had to throw a punch.
Donald Trump, I think you need to go back and punch him in the face.
That I thought he should have punched him in the face.
I feel like punching him.
I'd like to take him behind the gym if I were in high school. If we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
No,
I will go and take Trump out tonight.
take him out now.
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
Please, get up in the face of some Congress people.
People will do what they do.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price.
We're going to go in there, we're going to...
This is just a warning to you Trumpers. Be careful. Walk lightly. And for those of you who are soldiers, make them pay.
If you had to be stuck in an elevator with either President Trump, Mike Pence, or Jeff Sessions, who would it be? Does one of us have to come out alive?
And there's more. I promise to fight.
Anyway, so the point behind all of that was, now, I heard threats on the president's life. I heard that they were threatening to physical harm upon him, upon Trump's supporters, elected officials telling them to attack people, right? Now, I'm wondering how many of those folks are going to be decertified, or first of all, how many of them are being investigated by the Secret Service, because they should be, but how many of them are going to be decertified from being able to run for office? Because I would love to see Maxine Waters and Elizabeth Warren and the vice president not be allowed to hold public office because of their threats of violence. Anyway, that's what I'd like to see anyway. But who knows if that in fact is something that will actually happen? I sincerely doubt it. Because, well, as we know, Democrats, well, they don't hold each other accountable. They don't hold themselves accountable. They don't believe in, what's the word I'm saying? They believe that when they decide, when they say something, when they come out against something, they believe that it's, well, they're just, it's all metaphorical, right? They believe that they are being metaphorical. But when Republicans say something that is clearly metaphorical, well, they are clearly inciting insurrection. That's kind of their perspective. And I don't understand how or why they think that they can get away with that. But for some reason, Mike, they seem to think that they can get away with just, saying whatever and doing whatever. And they really don't have to be accountable for the words that they use.
I think the best one in that examples that you had there, Craig, was I did not catch her name when she said we were going to go to Trump and F him up, and it got bleeped out. I think that's the only one that you could say was not a real threat. Everything else was, I'm going to punch him, I'm going to assassinate him, I'm going to murder him. The one that said, I'm going to F him up.
Does one of us have to come out alive?
Yeah, right, exactly.
I'm like, wait a minute. So you were in the elevator with she's in the elevator with Pence and Donald Trump, and she thinks she's the one that would come and make it out alive if it went down like that.
Well, she's wiry,
She's wiry.
Wiry. Wiry. They call her the leg.
Once again, and I get it, people use colorful language when talking about stuff, but you don't get to then turn around when someone else says we need to fight. When the other side says the same exact thing, you don't get to then say they incited violence. You just don't get to do that.
They said we're going to punch Donald Trump. They said somebody has to put a bullet in him. Okay? Yes. Those are direct death threats. Those people should be in jail. Absolutely should be in jail right now.
Most definitely. They should be not only should they be in jail, but they definitely should not be allowed to run for public office. In this particular case, if you use their own standard, if you simply say to a group of people, we need to fight, then no, you are now, according to their standard, you are disqualified from running for public office.
But that's what tyrants do, right?
Right. Can't be surprised when tyrants do what tyrants do.
That's right.
All right. Okay, moving right along for our next topic, we're going to be talking about, the Texas shooting. That shooting took place at a church in Texas. Now, you guys recall there was an individual went out, bought a firearm, he had been released from the military. I believe it was a dishonorable discharge. Whatever discharge it was, he was not supposed to be able to own or possess firearms. Right. Yet he went through the background check. He was able to purchase a firearm, and he used the firearm that he purchased to shoot up folks in a church there in Texas. Well, now, so the victims, or the families of the victims, those who survived, and the families of those who did not survive, sued the federal government because of their failure to do their jobs, which, by the way, in many cases with a lot of these mass casualty events involving firearms, we find it's usually the government failed at one point or another. And in this case, they failed to the tune of $230 million. That's how much the federal government is going to have to pay to the victims of this particular shooting. So one of the things, Mike, that it shows me is that, at least there's some recognition, at least by this judge, that a lot of these shootings, or at least this shooting, was largely a fail of the government to do their job.
Yeah, that's exactly what this was. You remember, Craig, we have to have background checks because background checks are going to save us all. What would happen here is this guy got out of the Air Force, if I recall correctly. He had, like you said, it was either a dishonorable discharge or a general discharge under other than honorable conditions. Either way, it was one of those discharges that should have precluded him from getting a background check positively approved when he goes to purchase a firearm. Well, the Air Force did not report that to whether it was the DOD or directly to FBI as they were supposed to, and this guy was able to go purchase the firearm after being denied, or he denied his rights based on his discharge from the military. Well, guess what? Their background checks didn't work again, and this time they didn't work again, Craig, because they screwed it up. And that's where this judge decided, hey, federal government had an obligation to us based on their absolute profession, Craig, that the background checks will stop this from happening, will stop firearms, crimes from happening. Well, it didn't happen, and it was the government's fault, and so the government got to pay.
Well, but isn't the history of mass casualty events involving firearms, isn't it just like full of instances where individuals legally purchased a fire? Well, let me clarify. We're not supposed to legally be able to purchase a firearm, and yet the government failed to do their job. There's the Orlando shooting. The shooting took place at the Orlando nightclub, the Pulse nightclub shooting. That was a guy who had been investigated and looked into by the FBI and the DO, and was a government contractor. And yet and still they knew there were problems with him. And yet and still he was able to purchase a firearm. There are a number of shootings here in California where that's happened. Once again, where the government failed. And by the way, California is what's called a point of contact state, where our Department of Justice does it. So when they do the background check, the NICS background check is just a part of the background check that they do. But yet and still, people able to purchase firearms when they're not supposed to. And needless to say, we're not safe. But, well, that just kind of seems to be the way that it is. Well, kind of like, Mike, the way it is in San Francisco. Now, this was one that I found to be interesting. And I know that they were rumored to be doing this. And I did not actually think that they were going to be pushing this idea. But in the city of San Francisco, now they're realizing that there's a housing crisis, quote unquote, crisis in California that is, they say is, or a homeless crisis that they say is largely because, well, rents and whatnot are too high. But no small part of it, quite frankly, we know is drugs and drug addiction, but we won't debate that right now. But one of the things that's been happening in the city of San Francisco is there's a lot of vacant housing, whether they be apartments, condos, or homes. They're vacant because people are like, they don't want to rent it below market value, in some cases below what the actual mortgage on the property is. So they're trying to hold out so that they can get renters who can actually, at the very least, pay the mortgage. Well, in San Francisco now, there is a proposal, and they're going to be putting it on the ballot. The supervisors have actually voted to put it on the ballot. It's a ballot initiative where they need about 9,000 signatures. If passed, this will create a tax on vacant properties. That's right. You're going to have to pay a fee if you have a home or an apartment and you're not leasing it or renting it. Maybe like you say, if it's vacant, it's going to amount to where is it at here? The tax here going down. It's like $2,500. Well, it starts off at $1,000. Then it goes up to 25. Oh no, here it is right here. So it's if a unit is smaller than 1,000 square feet, you'll be taxed $2,500 for the year, right? Or a little over $200 a month. If it's or $10,000 over 3 years, or for 3 years. If it's a home that is 20,000 or more square feet, you're going to be taxed $20,000 taxed up to $20,000 for up to the third year. So, Mike, they're trying to manipulate the market by forcing people to rent out their properties or pay the tax.
Yeah. It's so California, right? Craig, I guarantee you, and it's probably not in this part of the story, that these people that have their houses or their rental facilities that are left vacant, I bet you they're getting a government subsidy for that. I bet you they're getting something from the city, from the county, or from the federal government that says, it's my COVID protection money where I'm unable to rent it now because people are out of work, so I get a stipend or a supplement towards that. I guarantee you there's somebody out there getting money. This is just like what we saw with the small business loans, which became the large business loans after COVID started. That's allowing them to put extra money in their pocket so they don't lose it. Just the same way renters, remember, Craig? Renters didn't have to pay for forever.
Well, Mike, actually in California, one of the things that was interesting was the state was providing subsidies to renters, but not to landlords. Or let me clarify. Before they were providing subsidies, what they were doing was telling renters, yeah, you don't have to pay your mortgage. You can't, your rent, you won't be evicted. And then after that, they started then paying subsidies, right? So then they had the rent subsidies that people could apply for. But as far as I know so far, there hasn't been any real subsidy, at least in California that I know of, for landlords. So if you own a property,
what you had was, I'd encourage you to check. What you had was they were told that they didn't have to pay the bank, that the bank was going to have to allow them to continue to push back the loan or the mortgage or whatever, because if it was COVID related.
Well,
so
right. So in other words, they weren't able to engage. They weren't able to then engage in foreclosures. Now, the problem that creates is that as soon as the moratorium is lifted, you have back mortgage that if you don't catch up on it, property gets foreclosed on. And by the way,
no, that was part of the deal under the COVID was you just push it back. So if you're in the middle of a 25-year mortgage,
I don't think it worked that way. I don't think it worked that way. I could be wrong. I wholly admit I could be wrong. But I do know that there was a lot of talk about landlords needing relief, and I don't know that they ever got it.
Right.
Either way, forcing people to rent out their properties this is market manipulation is what it is.
Yes.
And what you're going to wind up having is people trying to sell these properties, and they're going to wind up selling them for far below what would have normally been market value.
Yep.
And they're going to be able to write off those losses for up to 10 years, right?
Yep.
They're going to write off those losses, which means less tax money for the state, because the people who own these properties are largely probably high-income earners. And if they're high-income earners, they're the people that pay the overwhelming majority of the taxes in California. So now all of a sudden you're going to start to see tax revenue in California start to be dramatically impacted.
Yep, absolutely right. Then once again, the rest of us around the country get to pay for California's financial woes.
Well, as long as Democrats are in charge in Washington, D.C., and they'll continue to try and subsidize states like California and New York and Michigan. I mean, all the liberal states who pass all these liberal policies, you'll continue to subsidize us.
Absolutely right.
Well, and that was one of the brilliant things about Trump's tax policy was, at the very least, it made it so that, look, okay, California's a high tax state. You don't get to then be subsidized by the rest of the country, at least when it comes to your property taxes and your income tax.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and then remember, law enforcement training, and then remember, 4 and 3. The president flat out said, he goes, "No, you've screwed this up. You figure out a way to cover it yourself."
Right. Exactly. And the sad part is that in California, because the investment class has done so well during COVID, and this is important for you to understand, the California economy is not doing exceptionally well. We have the highest unemployment in the entire country. We have some of the lowest GDP in the entire country. But the key here, the point here is that the investment class, people who invested in these companies, because when the governor was shutting down all the small businesses, he let the big businesses stay open. The online businesses stay open. And so people were investing in them, and the investment class, made a boatload. And so California has a surplus. And so they mistake that for thinking we have a strong economy, and we don't. And as soon as those investments start to go down, we will start to see massive, probably, billion-dollar deficits in the state of California, multi-billion-dollar deficits in the state of California.
Right. Absolutely right. Correct.
It is sadly only a matter of time if we keep on the same path. But Mike, it's the myth. It's the myth that people think that you can just you can keep going after, you can keep trying to kill the golden goose, and it will still continue to lay eggs no matter what you do. Now, this next story actually comes from our good friends over at Liberty Park Press, the folks who are from the Second Amendment Foundation. There was the mayor there in, I believe it was Seattle. And the mayor of Seattle decided to come out, and he was talking about the fact that he wanted to institute gun laws in the city of Seattle, but he couldn't because of this rare thing that exists called preemption. That almost no other state in the country has, that prohibits local governments from passing firearms laws or gun control laws because, the evil people who put it in place there in the state of Washington, they didn't want local governments to be able to protect themselves. Well, it turns out, according to the folks, once again, or Alan Gottlieb and the folks over at Liberty Park Press, turns out that, what he was talking about was actually a myth. One of the things they note in this article, Alan Gottlieb points out, Mike, that 42 states in the country actually have preemption laws. Now, maybe you can help our viewers understand exactly why is it important to have these sorts of preemption laws.
Well, that way you don't get a patchwork of laws throughout your great. Whether let's say it's speeding laws, Craig, and every interstate, every county, every city and every county owns a piece of your major interstate that runs through your state, right? And every city and county decides they're going to change the speed limit on that piece of interstate. Might be 35, might be 55, might be 75, but we're not going to put up any signs that tell you that there's been a law change when you cross over a jurisdictional boundary. So now you're going to drive down the interstate and you have no idea what the speed limit is, and you're getting pulled over every 5 miles because the laws are different. That's what preemption stops. It says only the state shall have the authority to make laws governing this body of laws, whether that be speed on the interstates or firearms laws.
Well, exactly. I think you just hit the nail on the head. One of the things I found that's kind of interesting, like here in the state of California, we actually have, for example, the city of San Francisco prohibits hollow point ammunition. So I may have the ability to conceal carry, and legally they have to recognize my concealed carry permit. But if I'm utilizing, or if I have in my possession hollow point bullets, I could be breaking the law. They could arrest me and confiscate my firearm and confiscate the ammunition. That's the sort of thing that happens because you don't know what cities have what laws. And that's why states want to do that. It's not even really about being pro Second Amendment. It's about protecting people's rights. You know, obviously, if people will say that being ignorant of the law is no excuse, right? It doesn't exempt you from the law. But in cases like this, how can you comply with laws that you have absolutely no idea because it changes from boundary to boundary, from city to city, or from county to county?
Well, you're right, Craig. Listen, ignorance of the law is no excuse for disobeying the law. However, unlawfully creating a law is more illegal. You can't be expected. You can't be expected to abide by an illegal law. You know,
right.
If the preemption says we are the only ones that make laws around this, well, then that's what you do. The state said, we shall be in charge of this law. And if some city charges you with violation of some law that they created or ordinance they created beyond the state law, right. Guess what? That's why you get sentenced in state courts. You don't get sentenced in city courts.
Well, exactly. So to go back to your example, when it came to speed signs or speed laws, it's not that a city cannot set speed laws in their particular area. It's though that it has to be posted, and it has to be posted in an area where people can see. Otherwise, you default to the state standard. What is it on the highway? What is it on a road? What is it in a school zone? Right? You have.
Well, that's why I give the example of the interstate, because the interstate, only the feds and the state can put that on there. You want to get off the highway and change some speed limits in your little town, that's fine. But yeah,
even in those cases, it has to be posted.
Yes.
If it's not, then it defaults to what the state. I don't want to give
people the idea that I can create an illegal law and then just post it and it'll be all right.
Right.
So.
Okay. I see your point. But these are the sorts of things that, once again, these are the sorts of things you hear people on the people, anti-gunners or people on the left. They continue to say things that just flat out are not true, and most of the folks in the media don't check them on it.
Right.
And it's because they're able to get away with saying things that are not true that you have many in the electorate, many voters who assume things. They think they know what they're talking about. But you and I both know they have no idea what they're talking about. And the worst part is that when you share with them the truth, they get angry with you.
Yes, they do. They don't like to be shown up, right?
Nope. Nobody likes to be shown up. And then, once again, that goes back to, just the very truth of, and I will go to our parting shot. It was amazing to me how few people out there actually believe that there were actually violent riots that took place during the 2020, the summer of 2020, summer and fall of 2020. Once again, they fall into the idea of this. They were mostly peaceful protests. Now, Mike, I've already gone through the numbers. There were about 8,700 total protests. About 600 of them were violent, so you can say most of the protests were peaceful. Now, with them, by the way, that's based on a very liberal understanding of what is violent. But what we know is about 94%, 95% of the 600, and that's a lot of violent protests. Violent protests actually originated out of these quote unquote peaceful protests. Which, by the way, leads us to this. Once again, 2020, 2021, across America, we saw thousands of police officers were injured. Several dozen people were killed. Private property and businesses were looted and destroyed. They went after courthouses. They went after city halls. Billions of dollars of damage was done. And yet to them, that was mostly peaceful. Yet now you have the protest that is taking place in Canada. There's been no property destroyed. There's been no one harmed. There's been no injuries. There's been no death. Maybe there's been a few parking laws or traffic laws that have been violated. But other than that, no sign of a quote unquote violent insurrection. And yet that's exactly how the mainstream media would have you believe is going on right now in Canada, America's hat.
I like to think of it as our attic,
Exactly.
Up there, our attic,
There are some cool things up in the attic, but you spend a long enough time up there, you realize there's a reason why you don't spend a lot of time in the attic.
But listen, God bless those guys up there in Canada, those truck drivers, those gals and guys. They're doing what they're doing. They're standing up for freedom, and hopefully it bleeds across the border into their brethren here in the States. So wouldn't that be a kick in the pants, right?
That would be phenomenal, and I am so much looking forward to once again, peaceful protest, people standing up and seeking redress from their government. I'm 100% down for that, and unfortunately, Mr. Trudeau there in Canada is not in favor of that. But then again, he is a socialist Marxist, so
we know so. Yeah,
we know so. All right, Mikey, how about a quick shout out to the sponsors before we go?
Let's say hello to our good friends at Guerrilla Machining, Grid Defense, and of course, the good friends, good people at the California Republican Assembly.
Yeah, folks, please make sure, once again, visit their websites. The links to their websites are in the description to this video. You going and supporting them encourages them to support us. So once again, help them, help us, help you as we talk about 2A news and conservative views. With that, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and encourage your friends to do the same. With that, sir, I guess we are Audi 5000. Freed Back Friday tomorrow.